In 2009, when the name Brittany Murphy was still deeply etched in the memories of American audiences with her sweet smile and innocent eyes, Hollywood was left in shock upon hearing that she had died in her own home. A young, talented star who had taken the entertainment industry by storm in the early 2000s suddenly passed away at just 32 years old. At first, it was suspected to be an overdose, but the deeper investigators looked, the more chilling the case became, filled with unsettling and unusual details. What really happened behind the doors of that house? Watch until the end, and you'll understand why this story continues to haunt America to this day. Brittany Murphy was born on November 10, 1977, at Georgia Baptist Hospital in Atlanta. When she was still very young, her father, Angelo Bertolotti, decided to move the family from Atlanta to New Jersey. He wanted to be closer to the children from his previous marriage, but that choice unintentionally pushed Brittany's family into the shadows of his past, connections that were far from clean. Angelo had once been a World War II veteran, a man who used to be strong and resilient, yet burdened with many secrets. His ties to the criminal underworld never truly ended. As those dark shadows began creeping into Brittany's childhood, her mother, Sharon Murphy, stepped up without hesitation to protect her daughter. She filed for divorce and cut off anything that could threaten Brittany's safety. From that moment on, the image of her father slowly faded into a distant, unfamiliar part of her life. However, that empty space was soon replaced by a different kind of dream. At just 5 years old, Brittany went to a restaurant with her mother and happened to see two Hollywood legends, Burt Reynolds and George Segal. Without hesitation, she walked up to them, smiled, introduced herself, and confidently declared that one day she would become a star just like them. It wasn't childish chatter. It felt like a prophecy of her fate. By 1991, Brittany was 13. The dream inside her had grown so big that it could no longer stay trapped in New Jersey. She asked her mother if they could move to Los Angeles, the land of art, fame, and endless opportunities. Sharon did not hesitate for a second. She had always believed in her daughter more than anyone else ever could. So the two of them left, heading toward Hollywood to begin a brand new life. From the moment she set foot in the so-called promised land of dreamers, Brittany understood that nothing would ever come easy. Small television roles came and went. The young actress had to wait patiently for 4 long years before she finally landed the opportunity big enough to change her life. That opportunity was Clueless, 1995, the film that turned Brittany from a fresh newcomer into a name that all of Hollywood suddenly noticed. When she took on the role of Ty Frazier, Brittany was only 17. Her mother had to be on set with her at all times due to the regulations for underage actors. In reality, Sharon was much more than a legal guardian. She was Brittany's only anchor in a glittering yet dangerous Hollywood. In 1995, just as Brittany's career began to rise, disaster hit. Her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. Overnight, a teenage girl found herself torn between two worlds, movie sets and hospital rooms. Days spent filming, evenings spent as her mother's caretaker. Brittany had no right to feel tired. No chance to live a normal youth like everyone else. Director Amy Heckerling later said that Brittany handled everything like a true professional. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning. From here on, any factor outside her control could become a threat, not only to her career, but to her very life. One of Murphy's most acclaimed roles wasn't even one most audiences immediately linked to her. It was Luann Platter in the long-running animated series King of the Hill. The innocence, sass, and underlying vulnerability in the character blended seamlessly with Brittany's own spirit, making Luann unforgettable. Simple lines like, "Uncle Toggy, my practice hair head has real hair on it," still make fans laugh every time they recall them. When Luann pleads, "Don't touch," it sounds like the voice of a young woman trying to protect something precious she has left. Beyond animation, Brittany continued to prove she could stand shoulder to shoulder with Hollywood's biggest stars. In Girl Interrupted, 1999, she starred alongside Angelina Jolie and Winona Ryder, two of the industry's reigning queens at the time. Even though she did not have the lead role, Brittany was the one who made critics stop, take notes, and look at her with an entirely new level of respect. Stepping into the 2000s, Brittany carried massive expectations. She wanted to prove she wasn't just a cute supporting character, but a true leading star in Hollywood. Tinseltown welcomed her, though at the same time it revealed traps ready to swallow anyone who let their guard down. Some of her films succeeded, helping her rise higher. Others failed hard enough to leave her shaken. The harshest blow came from the 2000 film Cherry Falls. Brittany played the lead in a violent and highly sensitive story about a killer targeting virginal teenagers. The film reached a shocking peak with a mass scene so controversial that studios were forced to cancel its theatrical release. Audiences never got to see the movie on the big screen. A moment that should have carried her into the spotlight suddenly disappeared, leaving behind an unwanted silence in her career. Just as Brittany was trying to regain her footing, life hit her with another painful test. In 2003, her mother Sharon faced a severe recurrence of breast cancer. Brittany didn't hesitate to halt all her projects. She stayed by the side of her closest friend in the world, fighting for hope one day at a time. Thankfully, her mother survived surgery and continued to live on. Despite the turmoil, Brittany always had one strong supporter in the world of film criticism. Roger Ebert, one of Hollywood's most influential voices, often gave her glowing praise. Even when a movie was only average, like Don't Say a Word, 2001, he recognized Brittany's charm, wit, and the natural comedic spark of a true star. He even compared her to the legendary Lucille Ball, a compliment any actor would dream of. Then, fate finally smiled on Brittany when she landed a role in 8 Mile. It was a milestone that made global impact thanks to Eminem's star power. Brittany played his love interest, and their chemistry felt so real that rumors of a romance spread off-screen. She later confirmed they did date after the film's release. The success of 8 Mile launched Brittany to a whole new level. For a moment, the road ahead looked bright. However, fame always demands a heavy price. Brittany's slender frame became an easy target for tabloids. They accused her of eating disorders, drugs, and a reckless lifestyle. She denied every rumor without hesitation. Yet in this industry, once a seed of gossip is planted, it grows beyond control. She smiled for cameras, while behind the scenes, she struggled against endless waves of doubt surrounding her name. In her next film, Just Married, she starred opposite Ashton Kutcher. Once again, life imitated art and the two began dating. After 7 months, they split, with friends saying Kutcher wanted to return to bachelor life. That breakup sent Brittany into a string of relationships that all ended in disappointment. In 2003, she met Jeff Quatinetz, her manager. The relationship was so intense that he proposed after just a few months, early in 2004. Yet only 4 months later, they went their separate ways. Then came a new chapter with Joe Macaluso, a production assistant. They got engaged, fans cheered, and magazines wrote about a bright future for the New Jersey girl. Still, that engagement lasted only 8 months before falling apart. On screen, she was always joyful and funny. Off-screen, Brittany wrestled with harsh judgment from the public and the press. Although famed critic Roger Ebert consistently stood up for her, others were far less kind. Stephen Holden of the New York Times once harshly claimed Brittany was like a dumb Meg Ryan with a layer of Melanie Griffith on top. Words like that cut deep into the fragile confidence she had left. Tabloid scrutiny, cruel rumors, and the relentless exposure of her private life pushed Brittany towards severe insecurity. Friends said she began to believe she wasn't enough. Not pretty enough. Not perfect enough for the star the world wanted her to be. In that emotional chaos, Brittany met Simon Monjack in 2006. He was a British writer and filmmaker, calm, confident, charismatic. After reading one of his new scripts, Brittany was instantly drawn in. She reached out to him to express her admiration. Monjack, fresh from a broken marriage, quickly returned her interest. Their relationship began as suddenly as a romantic movie. To Brittany, he was completely different from the men who came before. He presented himself as experienced, knowledgeable, and repeatedly insisted he was wealthy. Yet behind that polished exterior was a deeply troubled past. Anyone who had known Monjack had a bad story to tell. Wherever he went, he left behind bounced checks, fraudulent deals, unpaid bills, and angry former partners. Before meeting Brittany, he had been wanted for credit card fraud, evicted from 4 different homes, and owed his ex-wife several months of rent. What terrified others was that as the truth surfaced, Brittany chose to ignore it. She defended Monjack's reputation fiercely, no matter the warning. When he faced legal trouble, she paid $10,000 to help settle a lawsuit for him. Love had pushed her into sacrificing everything. The two were nearly inseparable during the early months. Yet one fact could not be hidden. Monjack was living in the U.S. with an expired visa. In February 2007, he was arrested for immigration violations. The shock escalated concern among those close to Brittany. After 2 broken engagements, Brittany believed she had learned from the past. This time, she and Monjack made only one announcement. They had gotten married in secret in May 2007. It should have been the happiest turning point. Instead, friends later realized it was the beginning of a strange new chapter. Monjack grew paranoid in unsettling ways. He insisted that a mysterious force was watching them and that someone had planted listening devices on their phones. Over time, that paranoia only intensified, pushing the couple further away from friends and family. The only exception was Brittany's mother, Sharon, who lived with them. Perhaps it was Monjack's erratic behavior and his terrible reputation that led to Brittany's career slowing down. According to Brittany and her family, there was a bitter irony behind the tabloids' accusations of drug abuse. She once stated she had a heart condition that made it dangerous for her to touch stimulants. The only thing she ever drank occasionally was a single glass of champagne to relax. Yet in the eyes of the public, lies always seemed more believable than the truth. Since 2003, Brittany had lived in a luxurious Hollywood Hills mansion once owned by Britney Spears. People assumed it was a symbol of success, but to Brittany, it felt more like a nightmare disguised in glamour. She was terrified of returning home after work. She begged Simon to let them stay at the Beverly Hills Hotel for a few days just to escape the invisible dread, but he always refused. By 2009, Brittany looked in the mirror and no longer recognized herself. She decided to change. She made plans to leave that haunted house behind, move to New York, and restart her career with independent films, where talent mattered more than scandal. She hoped the fresh start would also help Simon find work and escape his constant anxiety. It should have been a turning point. Instead, destiny chose a darker path. Late in 2009, the 3 of them flew to Puerto Rico for Brittany to work on The Caller. On the very first day, the production team asked Simon to leave the set. To this day, the reason varies depending on who tells the story. The only certainty is that Brittany never made it past that first day of filming. Some say she quit, others claim she was fired. The official paperwork vaguely states it was a mutual decision. Despite the setback, they stayed for another week to enjoy the ocean and lift their spirits. That brief joy carried hidden danger. Both Sharon and Simon came down with bad colds. On the flight back to the U.S., Simon suddenly went into distress and stopped breathing midair. Amid the chaos, Brittany was the one who performed CPR and saved him. That moment haunted the rest of the trip. Tabloids swarmed again, spreading cruel speculation. Brittany was now not only physically weakened by illness, but emotionally destroyed by mockery and judgment. She began relying on multiple prescription medications to manage her symptoms, which included shortness of breath, pneumonia, and sheer exhaustion. On the night of December 19, 2009, Brittany was gasping for air. She sat there, pale, sweating, and terrified. Sharon begged her to call a doctor. Brittany shook her head. She was afraid of becoming another sensational headline, afraid the media would turn her into a joke. She was too exhausted to fight the world anymore. She chose silence, hoping tomorrow would be better. It was a Saturday night, and she finally agreed to schedule a doctor's appointment for Monday. Tragically, she would never make it to that appointment. Early in the morning on December 20th, 2009, a power outage hit the house and the backup generator failed. Brittany called out to her mother in desperation, with a heartbreaking plea. "Mom, I'm dying. I love you." She knew the end was near, about an hour away. Her mother would later recount through tears, "No, sweetheart, no." Paramedics rushed Brittany to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where she suffered cardiac arrest and passed away just 2 hours after the 911 call. She was only 32 years old. The next day, the coroner began the autopsy. Time dragged on unbearably. 2 months later, the official report was released. Brittany died from acute pneumonia, anemia, and complications from prescription medications she had taken. The conclusion was quickly accepted as the final answer. The public mourned. Colleagues shared beautiful memories of her. The noise of speculation began to fade. Yet sometimes tragedy does not end when we think it does. 5 months after Brittany's death, her husband, Simon Monjack, was found unconscious in the same room. When paramedics arrived, he was already gone. His autopsy report listed the same causes, pneumonia and anemia. It was a coincidence far too haunting to ignore. Hollywood was shaken once again. The only person left in that house was Brittany's mother, Sharon Murphy, who was nearly destroyed by the pain. Losing her daughter and then her son-in-law in less than 6 months left her devastated. But that devastation pushed her toward a single decision. She needed the truth. Sharon released a shocking theory to the public. According to her, both deaths were caused by toxic mold buildup inside the home. Brittany had often told her mother she felt uneasy and sick whenever she was there, but no one imagined that the place they called home might have actually been a hell slowly poisoning them. Just when it seemed the story could not sink deeper into tragedy, another figure stepped forward. Brittany's biological father, Angelo Bertolotti. He demanded toxicology tests on his daughter's hair and made an even more terrifying accusation. According to him, Brittany did not die from illness or mold. He believed someone had poisoned both her and Simon. The person he suspected was none other than his ex-wife, Sharon Murphy. The media pounced, turning the situation into a sensational family feud. Most outlets focused solely on the drama between Brittany's parents, ignoring one disturbing detail that had once been mentioned: Simon Monjack's lingering fear that they were being watched before he died. Monjack was obsessed with the idea that someone was surveilling them. His words sounded like conspiracy theories until a woman spoke up. Former Department of Homeland Security, DHS, employee Julia Davis revealed chilling information. She had once blown the whistle on dozens of foreign nationals from countries on the terrorism watch list being allowed into the United States on July 4, 2004, without proper screening. Davis said that when her warnings were ignored, she took her case to the FBI. After that, according to her, DHS turned its investigations and pressure toward her. Brittany, a close friend of Davis, supported her during the legal battle. That was when the actress's life began spiraling into chaos. Davis claimed the government added Brittany and Monjack to a surveillance list and even attempted to deport Monjack, who was still a British citizen. Simon became convinced their phones were bugged and that they were being followed every time they left home. In the 2012 documentary Top Priority: The Terror Within, Davis presented a series of claims and evidence suggesting that Monjack's fears were not unfounded. The most disturbing part was this. Just days after Monjack publicly spoke about the surveillance, Brittany took her final breath. The story grew even more tangled when, in 2019, Brittany's father died at the age of 92. Her half-brother continued pursuing the search for the truth. Nearly 15 years have passed, yet sealed files, conflicting testimonies, and overlapping theories continue to shroud Brittany Murphy's death in mystery. The young woman who once brought laughter to millions may have spent her final days in fear and isolation. We do not know if the truth lies forgotten in a locked file or buried beneath powerful lies. One thing is certain, Brittany's smile vanished too soon, and the world still has no final answer. Perhaps the real tragedy is not the death itself, but the possibility that the truth will remain forever buried in the dark.